Hey everyone, this is Bill Krieger from the Veterans Archives podcast, where we preserve and share the incredible stories of our nation's heroes. Catch us every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern on Wreaths Across America Radio, or stream anytime on Buzzsprout, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Really, anywhere you choose to get your podcast, you should be able to find us. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and follow us on social media to help us reach more veterans and supporters. We are a nonprofit, and this service is completely free for veterans. Every story matters, and every voice deserves to be heard. Spread the word, honor our heroes, and join us on this mission. Follow, share, and tune in, because their story should never be forgotten. Learn more at veteransarchives.org. We'll see you there. Good afternoon. Today is Wednesday, February 12th. We're talking with Richard Little, who served in the United States Army. So welcome, Richard. Thank you for sitting here and talking with us today.
Yes, sir.
All right. So as I said prior, we're going to kind of start out very simple. When and where were you born?
I was born here in Detroit. My mother was mad at my original dad because he was a semi-pro bowler. He worked for U.S. Rubber. And he was in Toledo, Ohio. When I was born, my mother said I was born at 5:30 in the afternoon on November 7th.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad was down in Toledo at a bowling tournament. And my mother was madder than a dickens because he wasn't there with her when I was born.
Right.
And she took me out of the hospital because we had, from what my grandmother told me, my mother said, all the babies were right there by the bed, the mother's bed, because if they wanted to breastfeed them or if they wanted to, they did that.
Right.
And about 11 o'clock at night, she was mad because my dad wasn't there. She got me in baby clothes and had me in her arms. I was all wrapped up in a blanket and that, and she left the hospital. I don't know if she was supposed to or what, but she did.
Uh-huh.
We went to she and I went to the train station in Detroit, the big building.
Yeah.
That's where you would go to get the train. She got on a train with me, and we went to Tennessee. And we got down to Tennessee, and I don't remember what town it was or where, but it was right on the east side of Tennessee. And my mother had something with she was hemorrhaging.
Okay.
And she had me in her lap, and so I was covered in blood. They thought I was born on the train.
Oh, no, no.
So,
no.
Yeah. So they took us off the train and took us to a doctor's house, because back then a lot of these towns didn't have a hospital.
Yeah.
And where you went to the doctor's house, and the doctor saved my mother, and he gave me a birth certificate. So I have a birth certificate for Detroit, and I have a birth certificate for Tennessee.
You just figure out which one you want to use at any given time.
Right.
Is that how that works?
Right.
Whatever's the better deal.
That's the honest truth.
Yeah.
And my mother was so angry at my dad because we weren't there, because he wasn't there.
Right.
and he and she they said it was about 5:30 or 6 o'clock at night.
Mm-hmm.
She packed me up and she left the hospital
Right.
and went and got on a train to going to Tennessee, because that's where my grandparents' farm was.
Okay, so that's why you were headed to Tennessee at the time.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And my mother, my mother was a firecracker.
Sounds like it. Sounds like she didn't take a lot of crap.
No, she didn't.
No.
And
I got to ask a quick question, Rich, if I can.
yeah,
Did he win the tournament?
yeah.
Okay, I was just curious.
He did 14 300 games.
Wow. Not
Yeah.
that there's an excuse for not being there when your child's born. I just wonder if he won that tournament.
Robert Hunter Little was my dad.
Okay.
And he got to be a vice president of production in U.S. Rubber.
Okay.
And my mother divorced my dad when I was 3.
All right. Now, so you get down to Tennessee, you're at your grandparents' place, and you settled in there? Is that where you stayed?
No, we were there for a while. My dad came down to Tennessee 3 days later. My mother wasn't going to go with him anywhere. He grabbed me and all the stuff that we had and put it in the car, because he always drove a Cadillac.
Mm-hmm.
That was my dad's thing. And picked up my mother, put her in the car, told her to shut up. This is what they told me. Not that I remember anything, because I don't.
This is how the story goes, though, right?
Yeah. And we drove back to Detroit. We lived at 620 Algonquin for a number of years. And the people, there was a black family that was next door to my dad. And they were from Tennessee. They had been, they were indentured servants because they were slaves. And my grandparents bought the whole family and told them that when they work on the farm and they make what they paid back my grandfather, what he paid for them, they're indentured servants. They're free. Because my grandfather didn't want to have slaves.
Right.
And all the black people that were there were all indentured servants. On the farm, it was 800 acres. And my grandfather always, on the farm, he had a white horse. And there was like 7 horses. And when I was old enough, when I got older, my grandfather gave me a pony. And the pony's name was Billy Boy.
Mm-hmm.
And I rode him with a saddle, and I was like 4. And my mother would be on her horse, that was a white horse, just like my grandfather's. And we'd ride around in the corral.
Mm-hmm.
And my grandmother, she played the piano. My grandfather played the banjo and the violin or fiddle. And I have them both.
Oh.
I have both the banjo and the fiddle. I went with my grandfather. We went to this gentleman's house, and he was playing, and he said, "Come here." I sat down next to him, and he put the banjo in my hands and the bow, and he said, "You hold the fingering with your left hand, and your bow is in your right hand. He showed me how to hold it, and he says, I want you to play the strings.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I did. And he said, okay. He said, when you get older, he said, you're going to be playing the violin. I said, yes, sir. You never were disrespectful with my grandfather.
Right.
He was for Sparta, Tennessee, he was the, what you would call the, if you got in trouble, you went to see him.
Oh, he's like the magistrate or the judge, the constable or...
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And I have his 38, police 38. And I have both the banjo and the violin. The violin is coming up on 200 years. And the same thing with the banjo. The banjo has it's the fingerboard is the fingering board is has it's white and it's not black, and it's got these he put the
the frets?
Huh?
The frets?
The frets. He put the frets, and then he put a bronze fret in between each he had the I can't think of
so you're talking about like the neck of the...
Yeah, it was on the neck. It was on the fingering board.
So
he put it was the whole violin, the whole banjo had this all the way around the barrel.
Okay.
And up it was
it like pearl?
It was pearl. Pearl.
Mother of pearl.
Mother of pearl.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
It was. He had that on the. It was on the violin and around the banjo.
Right.
And that's the way that's what he did. He was real good with his hands.
Well, that sounds beautiful.
And it's a beautiful instrument.
Well, I want to circle back around because you came back to Detroit with your dad, and you lived there. Your neighbors were actually people who knew your grandparents.
Yep.
And so, how long were you in Detroit before your mom and dad split up? Then,
till I was 3.5.
Okay.
My mother divorced my dad, who still loved my mother. He didn't want it to happen, but he had no choice because my mother was a firecracker.
Yeah.
And my mother, after I was 3.5, then 4, 5. 5.5, my mother had met my stepdad, who was in the Air Force. And my mother married Ernie Thaar, Thaar.
Okay.
And he was Airman First. And once he got married, we had to move to the Weary housing on Selfridge. When you come into the main gate, Weary housing is to the left.
It's all those old houses that are out there, right?
Yeah, all those it's like a townhouse.
Yes.
And that's where we lived. And we were, at that time, they were building all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And everything was muddy. And I had to take my shoes off outside
Mm-hmm.
in the winter and in the summer or whatever, because I couldn't come in the house with muddy shoes on.
Right. That's a good way to get in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And my mother was a housekeeper, cleaner, and you didn't mess with it.
Yeah, I'll bet.
And I mean, you could eat off the floor. I mean, it was ridiculous. And my stepdad, his parents were in Beulah, Michigan, which is up here.
Yes, I'm familiar with that.
Crystal Lake.
Yes.
Crystal Lake is the coldest damn lake that you ever want to be in. You can see the fish, and you're on the lake in a boat. Mm-hmm. You can look down and you could look at the schools of fish, and you throw your line right at them, and it comes down, and we had bacon,
mm-hmm.
raw bacon, on the hook, and that's what the fish went after.
Really?
Yeah.
I've heard of fishing with corn and all kinds of hot dogs. Never heard of doing that with bacon.
Yeah.
I'll have to try that.
And we had, the line was, the fishing line itself was, he would take the bacon itself, rub it on the fishing line, and then we'd toss the line in the lake, and you could see the fish.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe that's why they call it Crystal Lake.
Yeah,
because it's
crystal
clear. Yeah, crystal clear.
Crystal clear. You can see the bottom.
That's amazing. Wow.
And I tried to swim in the thing.
Uh-huh.
And it was just so cold. It was like putting your hand in ice water.
Yeah. That's cold.
Yeah.
Even in the summertime, right? It's cold
Yeah.
in the summertime, yeah.
Yeah. It was 38 degrees.
Yeah, it must be spring fed or something that it's that cold.
I don't know. I don't know. But the lake was so clear all the way across. You had like 500 feet on the other side was Lake Michigan.
Yeah.
And they tried to. They were gonna try to get Lake Michigan's water, because it was warmer, to come into Crystal Lake.
Uh-huh.
And they couldn't do it because Crystal Lake was higher than
Lake Michigan?
the Lake Michigan.
Yeah.
And when they opened up that area was about 6 foot of land. The water was draining out of the
Crystal Lake?
Crystal Lake.
Yeah.
And they had to close it off.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody should have looked at that a little bit closer before they did it. So how long were you at Selfridge then with your stepdad and your mom? Did you guys live there for a
We
while?
were there until we moved. Dad got orders to go to Alaska.
Okay.
We went from Alaska to France, to an Air Force base in France,
Okay.
and we were at I think it was about 8 months that we were on Selfridge, the first place we went. We went from France to Belgium. From Belgium, this is what my mother told me,
Uh-huh.
because I was just a kid, you know.
Yeah.
And we went from Belgium, and then we went to France again, and came out of France, and we went to Germany. And it was It was after the Second World War. I was born in 43,
Mm-hmm.
and everything in Germany was bombed out. There was no tall buildings. It was all blown away.
Yeah.
And people were living in tents. We're living in pup tents and everything else. And where we were on the base, we couldn't get quarters off the base because there weren't no quarters.
Right. Everything was gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we were on the base because my dad, he made staff sergeant. And when he made staff sergeant, we got quarters.
Okay.
We were living in a house with about this much room.
It's pretty small.
Yeah. And it was a 2-story.
Uh-huh.
And you didn't have stairs. I had a ladder
Oh.
that I climbed up and went into the bedroom that I was in. That was about from here to there.
Okay. Very small.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
And it was kind of crazy. But we went to we were on the back half. We were in the back half of a converted barracks.
Mm-hmm.
And another family was on the other half. And I went to bed. I went to sleep on this one night. My dad, he made staff sergeant, and he and Sergeant Keach, he was his best friend, and they were both in high school together. And he was there because he made staff sergeant at the same time, so they were having a party. And my mother didn't want me to see them drinking, so she put me to bed. Well, my bed was over here. The windows were over here.
Yeah.
When I woke up, the bed was all the way across the room over here because they had an earthquake. And there was this corner of the house, the ground opened up.
Oh no.
And I'm looking out the window, and I'm looking at the opening of the ground. My mother comes in and she says, "Why are you over here?" And I said, I didn't know. I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
And we were still getting the tremors,
Uh-huh.
happening. And I'm watching this thing do.
Well, that's got to be a little frightening.
I didn't know what it was. I was having fun watching it.
Yeah.
And my dad was flying, and my mother called the base, called operations, and said, we're about to go underground. They says, they had people come out and put up these poles
Mm-hmm.
in the dirt
Yeah.
on either side to support the house, because it was like,
Yeah.
it was just the whole corner of the house. And my mother said, "Don't go outside." She said, "Stay inside." I said, "I'm just going to ride my sled." And I said, "Nope." She told me this.
Yeah, she didn't want you falling in that hole for sure.
Yeah. And what we did, my dad got in, they moved us out of there into the sergeant's quarters.
Mm-hmm.
The sergeant where we were supposed to be. And it was on the other side of the base. And this earthquake that happened, it was that way for a year.
Oh, just sat there with this big hole in the ground?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
it was like half the corner of the house was held up by the poles, and it was we'd go by there and you'd still see the house was a little twisted.
Yeah, a little bit. That'll happen. That'll happen for sure.
And the other thing we had in Alaska was we had caribou and moose would be on the base. They'd come on the base.
Uh-huh.
Because we had grass that the Air Force put in. And it grew up, and these caribou and moose were eating the grass.
Well, yeah.
And they told us, don't, if they're in your front yard, leave them alone. And I mean, these moose were huge.
Yeah, and they can be mean.
Yeah.
They can be kind of mean.
And the moose was always there. The male moose was always there with his female, and she had small little moose that were like about that tall.
Yeah. Yes, they'd be very protective of those little moose, right? Yeah.
And but they grew quick.
Yeah.
Because the milk that she had was rich, and these moose were sucking them on her. It was really weird, but we left Alaska in 1952 and a half.
Okay, and you were born in 1943. 43. Okay, so you're about 9, almost 10 years old.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we were in Alaska during the Korean War.
Uh-huh.
And we could see anytime the Chinese or the Russians were flying their jet, their MiG, up the St. Lawrence Seaway. I think it was the St. Lawrence. Anyway, that the water in between it was 38 miles.
Uh-huh.
Russia was over here, and we were over here. Alaska was here. Here they were. It was 38 miles.
So you could just see them.
Yeah, you could see them. Their tanks.
Yeah.
And they never fired their guns at us.
Right.
And we never fired guns at them. But every time these jets would come through, they'd scramble F-86s out of Elmendorf Air Force Base. Mm-hmm. Isn't that strange? I can remember that.
It's funny the things that we remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we went to France. We were ordered. Dad got orders to go to France.
Okay.
And when we got to France, my dad was told that he was the head mechanic of these 300 people for all their aircraft, all the embassy aircraft, U.S. Embassy aircraft. And I would go with my dad, and when I wasn't in school, and I would go with my dad, and I'd help him. I'd sweep the floors of the aircraft and wash the leather the chair seats in the aircraft. And I'd reach up under the dash because I was small enough I could get into the dash and clean all the instruments. Mm-hmm. And I would always tell my dad if there was wires that weren't right, because I didn't want to get shocked, because I did.
Yeah, I can imagine. That's not a good place to be.
And I'm in there, and I'm supposed to be wiping off all these instruments that are, they're in the instrument board.
Yeah.
And it was. I told my dad, I said, "There's 6 instruments. I don't know what they are, but the wires are hanging loose.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, did you knock them off and I said, no, they're hanging loose. And he looked at what was wrong, and these 4 instruments were on his list. And he got down there, and I'm laying there with him, holding the flashlight.
That's really neat.
And he just took it with wires and stripped it out and tied it on there and put the bolt on there, and it was everything was squared away. Then he'd put the tape on it.
Yeah.
And he says, see how I did that? And I said, yes, sir. There was never, I never called him Dad, because he was my stepdad, but I never called him Dad. It was always yes, sir. And I was helping my dad clean a B-29 engine. And this general pulled up in his car, rolled the window down. He said, why aren't you in uniform, Airman? That's what he said. And my dad said, he's my son. He says, why isn't this airman in a uniform? He's on the flight line. Have him in uniform. He said, that's my orders, Sergeant. That's what he said. I remember that.
So they had to put you in a uniform then.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool.
I had to go with my dad to the clothing, to the quartermaster.
Yeah.
And I got dress blues, the whole 9 yards.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
And this was in Alaska, or no, France.
This is France,
It was in France. France was a eye-opening country.
Mm-hmm.
It was the women. If you were not on base, you were walking through a town which was 2 blocks away from the entrance, and you go there, and the women walk around in bikinis.
Yeah, France was a little bit different, huh?
Yeah. And my mother was mortified.
Oh, I'll bet. I bet you weren't, were you?
Oh, no.
No, I didn't think so.
I enjoyed watching these women.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so you must have been, what, like
11?
11, 12? Yeah, that's the right age.
Yeah. And my mother would say, you're not watching these French women. Yes, ma'am.
So
I'm looking right at them.
Right.
My mother's standing there, and I'm looking right at them.
Yeah.
Because right over from where the base was, there was the ocean.
Uh-huh.
Came in, from where we were at, and the aircraft took off over the ocean because they got complaints about the jet aircraft flying over their homes at all hours of the day and night, and they would complain. So they said, all aircraft are going to take off over the ocean. Well, they could as far as weather.
Yeah.
As far as the weather was concerned, they'd do that. We were in France for 2 years. We went from France to Germany. And you talk about a change.
Yeah, Germany was in pretty bad shape at that time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was.
No bikinis in Germany.
No,
Yeah, I didn't think so.
And eins, zwei, usp.
Now, what is that? Tell me what that means, because I have a German name, but I don't speak German.
Eins, zwei is I am.
Uh-huh.
Schund is young.
Okay.
And at least I think it was.
Yeah.
I don't speak German either, but we were in Germany twice. And I was 17 the next time I went there. And at 17, Germany has 17-year-old bars.
Right. Right. You could, it wasn't none of this 21 or any of that stuff.
Yeah,
It was 17.
it was 17.
Yeah.
And you go into these bars, the beer was warm because it was cold outside. The beer wasn't cold.
Okay, Rich, I got to ask this question. This is going to be very controversial. Warm beer or cold beer? Which one do you like?
I like the warm beer.
Okay. So you had a great time in Germany then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't. I stayed away. I tried to stay. They didn't have Coke. They didn't have. They had. I can't remember the word for it, but it's a glass that has ice cream and it had chocolate, and it was
like a
in
sundae.
layers.
Oh, like a parfait kind of thing?
I don't know what you would. It's like you put a straw in it and
Like a malted.
a malt.
Yeah, a malt. Okay.
And my mother, she wasn't happy with it because I was usually with my mother, and we went into this teenage bar.
Uh-huh.
And here I am, 17 years old. My mother's telling me, and these girls are all sitting around, and my mother said, these girls are not covered properly. They're not dressed properly.
Uh-huh.
How she would always say it. Yes, ma'am.
What did you think?
I'd say, oh, yeah.
They're dressed just fine, huh?
Yeah. Oh, man, it was the different countries, Germany was different because it was, the best thing in Germany was you could go into these bake shops and they had the best, it was a cake you would get a whole cake that was.
Yeah.
Were you ever in Germany?
I was not, but I know what you're talking about. My family, actually, my grandparents came from Germany, so
Yeah.
German baked goods are amazing.
Oh, I'm telling you. And we also had, it was, I can't remember what it was called, but it was beef, mashed potatoes, and it was beans that were long.
Uh-huh.
And you cut them, and they were so good. I mean, the food in Germany was magnificent, and we didn't have to ask for it.
Mm-hmm.
You always had slices of cake. That was part of the dinner.
That was just part of the meal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
And they would give me coffee.
Uh-huh.
I didn't drink coffee, except for when we were in a German restaurant. And that coffee was good. They want to know if I wanted beer. And I said, no, ma'am. My mother said, no.
Nope. Not at all.
No.
Well, it sounds like growing up, you got a lot of really good different experiences then.
Well, we were in Germany, we were in Belgium, we were in France, we were in we went to can't remember the name of the countries. It was 3 other countries.
Oh, were they all in Europe then?
Yeah.
Okay.
We were in Europe, and it was crazy. And each country is different. Their clothes are different. Their mannerisms are different.
Different languages, all that stuff,
Different languages and everything. I mean, you either had French, you had German, and Dutch.
Dutch, yes. The
Dutch.
Netherlands.
And the Dutch were fun.
Mm-hmm.
They were fun. It was fun. We had a lot of fun with Dutch. We went to we were living in a town that had the windmills,
Yeah.
and it was fun. It was just fun. And I was at that time I was 18, and we were with my dad being with the U.S. Embassy, we were staying in the U.S. Embassy. We had a house in the U.S. Embassy that had, this is funny, had a first floor, second floor, and a third floor. And and each floor had its own maid.
Wow, that's something.
Each floor had its own maid.
Uh-huh.
The maid that was on the third floor was 18 years old, and she was a beautiful girl. I am 17, and she has me in a tub, and she's scrubbing my back, and she is in her underwear. My mother walks in and says, "Oh, no."
Right. She put the kibosh to that, didn't she?
And she said, "What are you doing taking a bath? It's not Saturday."
Oh, no.
I don't know what day it was, but it wasn't Saturday.
Yeah, you didn't care what day it was, did you?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
Oh man, it was just real crazy.
So you were 18 when you were there. So at what point did you leave home and join the military then? Was that later on?
We were in Belgium.
Mm-hmm.
We went from Belgium to Hickam Air Force Base, Hawaii.
Okay, very familiar with Hickam.
Were you there?
I was never stationed there, but I visited there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were in. You come through the gate,
Mm-hmm.
and the living quarters were over. If the gate, and you came in, and you had to turn. You turn to the right, and you go down the street, and we were the fifth house.
Uh-huh.
And it was a house.
Yeah.
And that's where all the master sergeants were. And
so by this time, your stepdad had moved up in rank then, I'm assuming, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he was a master sergeant when we went into Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
We were in Hawaii for 2 years. I graduated from Waipahu High School in Hawaii. And I was on the state champion team, football team, and I was a halfback. And I played both defense and
offense?
Offense.
So you're one of those rare people that can play both sides of the field then?
Yeah.
Wow, because there's not a lot of people that can do that.
And
that's pretty amazing.
I played tackle
Uh-huh.
at times, and I busted through the line, and I hit the quarterback and the halfback. Richardson High School. That's who we were playing against. And I knocked the helmet off of the quarterback, and the helmet hit the halfback, and I grabbed the ball and I ran 20 yards into the touchdown.
That's amazing. Wow. That's a hard hit. You got to hit somebody hard and knock their helmet off.
Yeah, I did.
And that was in the state championship game?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I made 3 touchdowns.
That's incredible.
And it was such the football coaches, there was 3 football coaches, and I came back to the sideline, and the coach said, "You're defense. You're playing defense, and you made a touchdown." I said, "Yes, sir." He said, I was a sergeant. I said, yes, Sergeant.
You want to make sure.
You want to make
You
sure.
want to make sure you understood that.
But I had a ball in high school.
Uh-huh.
I went to 3 different high schools. Greenville High in Greenville, South Carolina, Donaldson Air Force Base. Then I went to, we were in France. And I can't even pronounce the name of the. It wasn't. It was a. In France, you go to school all year round,
Yes.
and but you don't go to school all the time. You go for 6 weeks, and you have a 2-week vacation.
Right. Yep.
Because of religious reasons. And I hated these schools because they were Catholic schools. And they'd put us in these, and they were mad at me because I couldn't speak French.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want to speak French. But I had to learn to entrer, soit, I can't even say it anymore.
Right.
I can't count, to 20 in the French language anymore, because I haven't done it in years.
Yeah.
And it was the same thing in Germany. In Germany, we were with the U.S. Embassy, and the only schools we went to was damn Catholic schools, and these nuns were fresh out of German concentration camps. And I mean, I was a 10-year-old boy, and I was scared to death of these French nuns,
Mm-hmm.
because they were meaner than hell. I got a broken bone right here.
Did you get hit with a ruler?
Hit me with a riding crop. Feel
Oh my
it?
gosh. Oh yeah. Yeah, right there.
Yeah. She hit my hand because I wasn't speaking French in class. I didn't know French. There was like 28 kids, and out of the 28 kids, I think there was only 8 people that could speak French. I didn't speak French. I was an American. The girls were told they couldn't wear pants. They had to wear this uniform. We were all in uniform.
Right, you all had to dress the same, basically.
Yeah,
right?
It was a blue blazer
Uh-huh.
and a blue tie, and the blazer had the school's emblem on the pocket, and the girls had to have their skirts 3 inches below their knees,
Mm-hmm.
because they didn't want anybody looking up their dress.
Right.
And the girls were always sat on our left because you couldn't see in their blouse. Their blouses, ours are like this.
Right, there's the opposite, right?
Theirs this way. So no, it was on the right.
Yeah.
Yeah, on the right, because their blouses were here. I had a girl sitting here, and I was here, and I had a girl sitting here. That was it, it was a girl, boy, girl, boy, girl, boy, and that's the way it was.
Mm-hmm. Must have been a relief to get back to the States then, and go to a school, a regular school.
When I got back, I was 2 years ahead of everybody.
Yeah.
Because I went to school all year round.
Yeah.
And we had what they called the holiday, or it wasn't called a holiday. It was called oh, what the heck was it called? I can't remember what it was called, but anyway. And we'd be out of school for 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
We'd come back to school and go right back into the 7 days, 6 days a week.
Whatever you were learning, and you were right back at it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was, and in France it was crazy because I absolutely hated the Catholic schools there, because the nuns that were in France were all, including the Mother Superior, they were all prisoners in a German concentration camp.
Let's take a quick break.
Hey, listeners, we need your help to keep the Veterans Archives podcast going. We're a nonprofit dedicated to preserving the stories of our nation's heroes, and we provide this service completely free to veterans. Your support helps us record, share, and archive these incredible stories so future generations never forget the sacrifices made for our freedom. Every donation, big or small, makes a difference. Visit veteransarchives.org to contribute today. Help us honor their service by ensuring their voices are heard. And thank you for your support, and thank you to all the veterans who have served our country. So they're probably dealing with some things of their own then, really, after having been through all that, I would imagine.
Oh, they were very, 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 they wanted everybody to speak French, and they could speak English, they could speak German, they could speak 7 different languages, most of them.
Yeah.
And they never said what they went through, but from what the girls said, they told the girls what they went through, and it was terrible.
Yeah. That'll change a person for sure.
Oh man, it was crazy.
Yeah.
We had the one grabbed me by the collar, and I grabbed her hand, and I pulled her hand off, and I said, "Don't touch me." And she said, "Jawohl." That was in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
And I told him I wasn't going to be beaten by these people. And my mother, she came to the school because I was sent to the, it wasn't the principal.
Like a headmaster or something like that.
It was a professor or something or other. And he said, "You do not grab the nuns." And I said, "I'm not going to have a nun grab my collar or grab my shirt or grab me, because she doesn't think I'm doing something wrong when I'm not." And he says, "Well, they were in German concentration camps." I said, "I don't care. They're not there now."
Right.
And I mean, there was all these nuns. This one nun that was about that tall, she would walk straight. You couldn't see her feet. You never saw her hands. And when you did see her hand, it was always with a riding crop.
Uh-huh.
She's the one that broke my wrist, my hand, the bone. And that's the reason I don't go into a Catholic church. I don't want to be there.
Yeah. Bad memories.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about some happier times then. You get to Hickam. So did you graduate from school? You said you graduated from school in Hawaii?
In Hawaii.
Okay.
Waipawa High School. I was in the band there, and I was also on the championship football team.
Right. So you played football, you played in the band. It sounds like that school was really good for you.
Yeah.
So what happened after you graduated?
I graduated from Waipawa High School,
Mm-hmm.
and I had my diploma, and it was like this. And all state diplomas, you have King Kamehameha on the diploma, and the writing is over it. You know, and yeah.
So tell me a little bit about what happens after graduation then.
I went down to, I was playing in a band. I was playing in the Royal Hawaiian Hotel, and I was playing also on the Matson lines, going back and forth between Hawaii and the mainland of the California, different towns we were in, and I did that for a year and a half, and I was a drummer on the Lurleen and the Matsonia, and because that's what I did. I played drums, and I played with the big band at the Royal Hawaiian, and that's the total pink building. That's the Royal Hawaiian. It's pink.
Yeah.
And the band that was at the Royal Hawaiian also played on the Matson lines. We'd split up either one or two. You know, we'd be on the Matson. We'd be in the Matsonia or the Lurleen. And I was on both of them. And the Matsonia was the fun because they had more teenagers on there because they'd have spring break.
Like the spring. Okay, spring break. Yeah,
spring break, and these kids were. You know, their parents had big time money.
Yeah.
Because it cost about $7,000 or $8,000 to be on this dadgum ship. And we had a ball on that ship. We played, the big thing then was folk music. And I had a drum set. It was about this tall. It had a bass drum that the bass pedal beat. It wouldn't play this way.
Okay.
It came this way.
Oh, okay, yeah.
From the bottom, and it took me a little bit while to get used to that.
Yeah, because that plays differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the snare was right under the skin on the top, and I could dial it for what we were going to play.
Okay.
And it would drop. It would drop like this. It would still be touching, but it wouldn't be the full snare.
Right.
And I had it about halfway, and it'd be you could still hear the snare in that. And
yeah.
And we walked around the swimming pool, and we walked around there was 2 swimming pools on the Matsonia. There was 3 on the Lurleen. The Lurleen was the younger ship, but it was a sister ship to the Matsonia. And I played on both the Matsonia and the Lurleen. And they were both in the 70s. They were taken to taken and taken apart.
Yeah.
And they had all brand new ships. They got 3 ships now. And I don't know what their names are or anything because I never was on them.
Right.
And but I got mad at the Union with the Matsonia and the Lurleen because we went into L.A. and we were asked to play for the bon voyage party of the people who were coming on the ship.
Right.
We went and played. And the union in the mainland, we had to pay they took half our pay because they said that it was, they should have played the bon voyage party. I said that we were asked to play. People came on the ship and asked the captain of the ship if we could go and play in the hotel.
Right.
He said, sure. Well, the captain of the ship said, go. And we did. We were all in tuxedos and...
Yeah, you were ready.
We were ready. And we went and we played for the bon voyage party, and we sang all the songs, and I could play the Hawaiian lick and that, and the girls that we had with us, they could do the hula.
The hula dancing.
The hula dancers, the three of them, and everything was in threes.
Huh.
There was 6 of us, and there was 3 women. We had 3 women, 2 sets of 3 women. If we were on the Lurleen, it was one thing, and the Matsonia was another.
Jeez. So you did this for a year and a half.
Yeah.
On these ships. So what did you do after that? You were upset with the union.
I was upset with the union for the mainland.
Yes.
Because they took half of my pay.
Right. The captain had told you could go play, and
right.
They didn't agree with that, so they took half your money, and then, so what'd you do?
Well, I quit.
Yeah.
And I went and joined the Army. And I went and I applied. I was sent to the Army Band, and I passed their little test. It was just to read this sheet of music, and I read the music and I played it, and I said, "That's all you want me to do?" And he said, "Yeah." He says, "You're in the band now."
That was easy. So did you go to basic training and all that?
I went to basic training.
Okay.
With the band.
Okay.
And it was a different kind of basic training.
Yeah.
It wasn't the basic training that you get for the Army, and because you had to learn. They wanted you to play your initial instrument. That was the drums. They wanted me to play 2 other instruments. They wanted me to learn to play 2 other instruments. So I picked the bugle and the trumpet. And the bugle I could get easy. The trumpet was a little bit harder because I was reading their B flat, and it wasn't anywhere near the drums or anything.
Right.
And I did not like the fact that everything we did in the Army Band was, well, what happened was this major who was all decked out, medals and all this other thing, and his beret, and he came into to our band room. There was 90-some people in there, and he said, "I'm a U.S. Ranger," and he says, "We want a band to play as a Ranger." And he says, "Do you have any volunteers?" Now my hand went up right away, and the other guy, 2 of the other guys did the same thing, and there was about maybe 9 or 10 people, and he said, "Okay, come on, you got to pass the physical." Well, out of the 3 drummers, all of us were able to do all the pull-ups.
Yeah, you had some good strong arms, right?
Yeah, you have to do pull-ups and push-ups.
Yeah.
and you had to do sit-ups, and you had to do when you're on the floor.
Oh, like leg raises.
You had to do the leg raises, and you had to do what the hell else was it? It was we had to do we'd go outside. We ran 5 miles, and the people that played horns could run like a rabbit. Us drummers, we didn't run all that. We didn't blow.
Right.
You know, so but we could we were always carrying the drums, which were heavy, and we made the cut. I wasn't all that good. I'm telling you the truth, I wasn't. Yeah, all three of us made it, and we were all in the band room after about 6 weeks of band training and that. And we had this warrant officer. He came in he had this dress coat. It was a dress coat. It had all kinds of
swirls and everything on it.
Yeah, twirls and all this. And he was a warrant officer. He was a top warrant officer. And I didn't even know what the hell a warrant officer was. I assumed he couldn't be a lieutenant, so they made him a warrant officer.
Not exactly how that works, but yeah.
He could play every single instrument in the band. He was excellent as a drummer. He was excellent as any other instrument, including the piano. And he came walking in with the same headgear as in the British bagpipes. And he had these
like epaulets or whatever.
Epaulets with
yeah.
I mean, he was ridiculous looking. And there was 9 of us drummers. There was 3 women, and they were playing the xylophone, and they were playing the other. I can't remember what it was called, but anyway, they were, and the other guys, the 2 other guys were playing timpanis.
Yeah.
And I could play them all myself, with it. And I wasn't that good with the xylophone and the thing, but I could read the music, so it was okay. It's just like the piano.
Yeah.
And I wasn't trained to play the piano, so I was but these girls, they were very, very good. And I played the snare drum, and we had to play 2 other instruments.
Right.
And I started with the bugle, and I went to the trumpet. And I had both the bugle and the trumpet. They were mine. They were given to me. And I had to make sure that they were playable all the time.
Right.
And I would go into the practice rooms, and I would play the rudiments, or not rudiments, but play the
scales, right?
Scales.
Yeah.
And the bugle, I got so that I could play taps. I could play several of the calls on the bugle, and that was in B flat. Now the trumpet was in B flat also, but it went from B flat all the way up to E. And it was the way you played the keys.
You're right.
and you this was A, and then A and B and C was how you know, and then you played it, and you got so that you could play different tunes and this type of thing.
Right.
And they'd say, all right, I want 3 drummers. You're going to play your trumpets. We go down to the trumpet section. We sit. I wasn't the first. It was, you sat in
The chairs.
the chairs. And I was like in the 5th chair.
Yeah.
And I could blow a clean tone. My tonality was good.
Uh-huh.
And but I'd have to study the music
Yeah.
because it was different from the drums.
Absolutely.
And it was, and I didn't consider myself a trumpet player, or I could blow bugle, but
You were a drummer.
I was a
You
drummer.
were a drummer. So tell me a little bit about, you got picked for this assignment to be part of the Rangers then, correct?
Yeah,
Okay. So then this whole time you're learning your band instrument, are you doing like Ranger type training? Are you going through their schooling or anything like that?
I went once we got to Ranger school around Ranger ground.
Uh-huh.
We didn't touch another instrument. For 28 weeks, we didn't touch an instrument.
Right. And what was that schooling like?
That was very hard,
Mm-hmm.
but I enjoyed it.
It was a good challenge, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I would you'd lay in bed and your arms would raise up. No kidding.
Yeah.
Your arms would actually raise up. You weren't pulling them up. They were automatically coming up. None of the girls, none of the women that volunteered for it were in Ranger school.
Right. It wasn't allowed at the time.
It wasn't.
Yeah.
And they were sent back to the band.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't. Sundays was the only day we had half day off.
Mm-hmm.
And I would go I had my drumsticks in my foot locker, the bottom of my foot locker. I'd pick them up and I had a practice pad and I would play the rudiments.
Yeah.
That's what I did. Once a week, Sunday afternoon, I'd do that. And these guys were saying, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm playing my rudiments." "Playing your who?"
Right.
And Sergeant came in the barracks and he says, "Little," he said, "I want you to be a radio man. You're going to radio school." And I said, "Yes, Sergeant." So that night I was packed up and I was sent to radio school for Fort Gordon, which is away from Benning.
Right.
And,
yeah. So you were at Benning for Ranger School,
Yeah.
infantry, and so now you're at.
I went to Fort Gordon for radio school.
Okay.
The MPs, that's where the MPs were trained,
Uh-huh.
and that's where radio people were. That's where we were. We had 6 buildings we went into.
So how long were you in radio school?
I was in radio school for 8 weeks, and it was 10 weeks. It was 10 weeks. 12 weeks. It was 12 weeks. And only one person out of all of us went to do Morse code.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't taught Morse code. I was taught everything was on the radio. I had a I had a screen. I had a computer that was before the computers came into civilian life, and I had to learn how to type again.
Yeah.
And because everything was going there, and then you'd hit print, and what you just typed came out of the printer.
Mm-hmm.
And we had everything. I was put in another class. It was crypto, and that I can't really talk about because it's top secret.
Cryptography, right? Yeah.
And it's a methodology,
Right.
and you get a set of numbers or a set of letters, and the first two letters are the page in the book, one of the books, and there's 7 books. And it would say what the page was, and it would say book 7 or book 6 or book 4 or book 1. And you had to learn it all went, and you go through this whole thing, and you learned you knew what you could type and what you couldn't type. And you would get you'd get real crazy. You'd get a message that was like 10 words,
Mm-hmm.
and you'd have the page number. You had the book you were supposed to go to, and then it would give you what paragraph you're supposed to take. And then from that point on, I can't talk about it.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, it's very important how they do these cryptology and the ciphers and all of that stuff. So,
and that's what, and I could do that because I was used to reading music.
Oh, it makes sense.
And these other guys, they were fighting mad because they were having all kinds of trouble doing that.
Mm-hmm.
They said, "How in the hell do I know which way to go?" I said, and I couldn't tell this kid, this other soldier, what to follow. We were told not to talk to nobody.
Right.
We couldn't talk to anybody. We couldn't talk to each other. And we're in the same damn class. And it got crazy. And the instructor would sit up there at the desk, and he'd come over and he'd look at him, and he'd say, and he would tell him, he'd get right down in his ear, and he would tell him what he was supposed to do, and he would do it.
Mm-hmm.
And we were told not to talk to each other.
Right.
But we were learning crypto, and that's excuse my language, but it's a son of a bitch.
Well, if it was easy, it wouldn't be worth having, right? So it's got to be difficult. So
man, it's the codes they give you. I had a message that was 10 words.
Mm-hmm.
So the first 3 words were numbers. The next numbers were letters.
Mm-hmm.
And the end of it was numbers, and that was a page on a book, in a book, and it also had what paragraph you were going to start on.
Right. So you went through radio school. You went through crypto school.
Yeah.
Did you go back to the Ranger Battalion then? Okay.
I did. I came back as a radio operator.
Okay.
And doing crypto, because 90% of the transmissions were crypto.
Right.
Because everything that the Rangers did was top secret.
Right.
And everything that we had was strictly cut top secret.
So this would have been what, 1960?
1967.
1967. Okay. And
I joined the Army in 1966.
Right.
Or no, 1962. Because I went through Ranger School,
Right.
and that's 28 weeks alone.
Right. So you were in Ranger School for almost a year, and then your other schooling, and so you get back to Ranger Battalion, and then what did you do after that? From there.
From there, I was operational.
Okay.
And what we did was wherever we went, it was I had to jump with 90 pounds of radios on either leg in a duffel bag.
Uh-huh.
And I would pick them up and shuffle, reach up, hook up, and I'm standing there holding that hook up, and I had this bag on my foot.
Yeah.
Had this duffel bag on my foot, and it was heavy. That's 90 pounds.
Right.
And I would release and it would just slide when you started walking.
Mm-hmm.
And I would be.
Right. You would literally shuffle to the door.
Yeah.
Yeah. You had to.
And the first time I jumped with everything, and you had at the top where it was around coming down my legs, I had these straps, and I would pull the cords. I had handles, and I could pull, and then they would release the bags.
Okay.
And when you're free of the aircraft and you're jumping, I'm going down, and my legs are here, and the bags are up here.
Okay.
And then they start when you're getting close to the ground, you release them, and they fall out, and you kick them. You kick the bags so that they don't wrap around your legs.
Right, because you don't want to break your legs doing this jump. Yeah.
And to come down, I had 90 feet of these. It was 90 feet. Yeah, 86 feet. I'm sorry, 86 feet. And they were out in front of me, and they were flying here, and I'm sitting in the harness.
Yeah.
And these guys would be, the wind would catch them, and they'd come on and catch me, and I'd be going, and you have to reach up and pull that chute down. And then we got the quad zeros, and that's the square chute.
Right. Much more precise, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got controls. You pull them down, and then you could make your chute actually turn.
Yeah.
Everything, you could fly. And that is a ball.
Oh, I'll bet. How many jumps did you make?
I made 200 jumps.
Wow. That's a lot.
11 combat jumps. The jumps that without the combat, without the everything, is called a Hollywood jump.
Right.
And we would do Hollywood jumps, and we had all of us were on the radio with everybody, so we could talk to everybody.
Uh-huh.
And I was a radio man, and I had that Treak 25 on my back, above the T10, which is the main jump chute. The T7 is your reserve chute, and they tell us in the middle of our jump, they would say, we are now operational. and all I had was a Preak 25, and I had another radio that was down behind my legs, and I could pick up a message and it would print out.
Okay.
It would print out what I had, and that's what I had to do. And Ranger School, I enjoyed the hell out of. I loved it because we were running, we were doing all kinds of things. And they taught us, the hardest thing was learning to, I'm not supposed to say, I can't say this, but we were supposed to eliminate our foes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's about all I can say about it.
Yeah.
And I didn't like that. And I had a Viet Cong woman come up out of the ground, and she hit me with a machete.
Uh-huh.
She was going to cut my arm off. She caught the butt of my rifle and my arm, because I was holding it this way.
Mm-hmm.
And I shot her 3 times. And the other guys, the other Rangers, they shot her too. They shot her 3 or 4 times. And I had below my jumpsuit, I had just landed.
Uh-huh.
And I had more radios underneath my chute, the reserve chute, and I unhooked it and everything, and it came out of the chute, and I grabbed the chute that was coming down, and you twist it.
Right.
You twist it, and it gets. You have all the cord going up, and you twist it so it
collapses the canopy, right?
It collapses the canopy. That brings the canopy down.
Yeah.
And the A10 is 64 square yards, and the T10, which is the reserve, is 48 square yards.
Okay.
That's the one that we have, and you have when you pull the cord on that, it's when it clears, it's spring loaded.
So it shoots out.
So it shoots out. The wind catches that, it pulls the chute out, because otherwise you got to grab it and shake it up.
Right.
And I mean shake it up. You got to get the air in it. And you don't have a lot of time.
Right.
And I seen guys land without a chute because the chute wasn't inflated. But they had enough air in the chute so that they didn't break their legs or their feet or their ankles or anything.
It was still a hard landing, I would imagine.
It was a hard landing.
Yeah.
You come in about 7 miles an hour.
Yeah. Well, how long were you in Vietnam?
I was there twice.
Okay.
18 months the first, and I came into, I was there 19 months the first, 17 and a half months because I got shot in the head.
Oh.
I got the round came through the helmet, spun around inside and took out everything from back here. And all of this was over here. And all I could see was that.
Oh my gosh.
Because I couldn't see anything on this side.
Right.
And Doc Weiss grabbed my face and pulled it back, put that back, and he said, "Don't move." And he put bandages all the way around my head and down my neck, and I had a brace on my neck that was up here.
Right.
I could still talk, but I couldn't really open my mouth because this was up here.
Yeah.
And all of this was wide open. All of this back here, the bone was gone. And they found the bullet. It was over here. They pulled the bullet out.
You're lucky to be alive.
Yeah.
I mean, that could have gone all kinds of wrong.
Way wrong. What they did, they used the same material that they did for teeth.
Yeah.
Same material was back as I've got back here. I had 5 doctors, a bunch of nurses. And I woke up in the middle of this thing, and I'm laying like this, and the nurse turns around. She says, "Shut up." And I got hit with another needle of something.
Right.
And I was gone.
So were you, when they were working on you, had they medevaced you out of country, or were doing this in country?
Oh yeah, I was out of country. I was on the USS Hope.
Okay, so you were on a medical ship then.
I was on the medical ship, and I woke up in a room that was about the size of this, and it was white. Everything was white, including the nurse.
Yeah.
I'm laying there, and they had me like this because they had my head all.
Everything's.
I had tubes coming down into these bags, and I woke up, and I asked the nurse. I said, "Am I in heaven or am I dead?" And she looked at me. She was a pretty woman. I'll never forget her face. I don't know what her name was.
Yeah, she was an angel.
But she gave me a shot. I mean, it was just like that, and I was out.
Yeah.
Next thing I know, when I woke up, I was in a hospital. I was off the ship. I was in Texas at San Antonio, Kelly Air Force Base Hospital. That's where I was. My mother and dad. My dad was going through Air Force recruiting school at the same base, and they were told that I was wounded, and that's all they said. My mother came in. I looked like something out of
A horror movie.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And my dad told her, he walked in first, and he had my mother. She didn't scream, she didn't yell, she came over to me, and she said, "We're here." And all I could see, because of the what they had on me, and I could see that much.
Uh-huh. Wow. Do you remember getting shot?
I got hit.
Uh-huh.
And I was reaching down, and I picked up John Turtle. His name is Turtle.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a radio man also. And I picked him up, and I put him over my shoulder.
So he had been hit.
He had been hit
already.
too. Yeah.
Okay.
And only thing I could do was turn and go to the sound of the helicopter. And I was running to the sound, and I'm bleeding like crazy. I got blood all over me. And I get to the helicopter, and I hand them Sean, and these hands come down and grab me and pick me up into the helicopter. I said, "I'm the radio man. I can't go."
So you had no idea.
I had no idea what had happened.
Wow. Okay.
And they took the radio off of me, and they handed it to this other guy, and I said, "Hey, he's not a radio man." And he said, "He is now."
Then they took off. Wow. Okay. So how long was your recovery? You were probably in the hospital for a while.
I was in the hospital for like 2 months.
Okay.
And when my mother and dad, because my dad was going through Air Force recruiting school, my mother was outside the door. They wouldn't let her in the room because I didn't have any of the.
Yeah, your brain was exposed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't want. Yeah.
All this back here was gone.
Yeah.
And they made the replacement was they told me after this was all done, these 5 doctors, these women, had the same material that they make the dentures,
Yeah.
the teeth, and that's what they put here. They made a plate because I don't have to have. I didn't. Guys that get shot in the head, they put a metal plate in.
Yeah.
And after about 2, 3 years, 4 years, they have to make a change with that, and that's what gives them the infections. That's why they don't last long, because they get infections. I'm a walking experiment.
A walking miracle. Either way, right?
Yeah,
But clearly it worked. You're still here.
yeah.
Yeah.
44 years at Chrysler.
So you let's. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, but so you were in the hospital for 2 months, recuperating, getting all of this stuff taken care of. What happens when you get out of the hospital? What happens then?
I couldn't walk. I was in a wheelchair, and they told us at Ranger School that if you get in a wheelchair and you stay in a wheelchair, you're not going to get out of it.
Right.
That's where you're going to die. And I wasn't going to be in a wheelchair, and I hate being in this because that's in my head.
Yeah.
And I had to go through physical therapy. They had me touching on both hands. I could do that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was a drummer, I had my wrist. I could play the drums. I could still play. And I was mad. They wouldn't let me try to do things.
Right.
Because they didn't want me to fall. That's the same thing now.
Yes.
And they won't let me. I can lock them up and stand up, and I can do what I got to do. And I'm not trying to show anybody anything. I'm just telling them that I can do what I can do.
Right. Well, so when you were in the wheelchair the first time, you worked really hard though and got out of it, right? I mean,
yeah.
You went through months of physical therapy and.
I had a cast on my head, and I could only see like this much out of my right eye. And my left eye, I thought I was going to lose my left eye.
Uh-huh.
And that's what I told them. And they said, no, your left eye is just being covered because it was injured. And I said, injured how? And they said, you don't know what happened to you? And I said, not really. And the nurse said, I got to talk to the doctor. So she went over and she talked to these 2 doctors. And they came over to me and they said, you got shot in the head. And back here, and he kept tapping on the back of my head, and he said, you feel that? He said, that's the plate we put into your head. I said, metal? He said, no, it is not, Sergeant. It is the same thing the same material that we make dentures.
Yeah.
And I said, okay. And I said, so I'm going to be okay. He says, yeah, you're going to be fine. And he said, your eye is going to give you trouble. He said, at times it's not going to look right. You're not going to see things right out of your left eye. And I said, I got to see things out of my left eye. I said, I'm a sniper, along with being a radio operator. I said, I got to be able to see all the numbers. And he says, okay, we'll work on it. And they did.
Yeah.
And what I got in my left eye was a new lens.
Mm-hmm. And now you can see. So you went through all of that. What happened? What was the final result of you? You were able to walk again. You had your eyesight back. You were done with your treatment for the most part. What happens next?
I went back to the Rangers as a radio operator, and I was back operational, and I could feel myself. I could feel the headaches.
Yeah.
I had headaches. I mean, I had headaches that just, my head would just, I just started having headaches, and I was, and they were, the pills they were giving me, I would be, if I stayed on them, I'd have to have them.
Right.
And I didn't want them because I hated them. Because they were so strong,
Mm-hmm.
they'd make you stupid. I couldn't read what I was supposed to be reading on the radio.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't see the damn radio right. Both my eyes were screwed up. Because these pills made my eyes hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And I would get this gray. I'd feel like it was gray. And I told the doctor that. And he said, all right, he said, we got to change the medicine. And they did. I was in and out of the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
In and out of the hospital for 6 months after being
Right.
And I was I couldn't. My first wife was my surgical nurse. I met her before I went to Vietnam the first time. And she would write me and I was writing her.
Uh-huh.
I couldn't tell what I was doing. I could write with either hand. Yeah, my right hand was better. My left hand, I put a pin in my hand.
Mm-hmm.
I get this shake, and I still do. I have to hold my hand and write that way if I'm going to use my left hand.
Mm-hmm. So your first wife was your surgical nurse in San Antonio?
Yeah.
Okay.
I met her in San Antonio. I was with my mother and dad.
Yeah.
Before I went to Vietnam, that's where I got, I was supposed to have 30 days leave, and I didn't get 30 days leave. All I got was 2 weeks.
Right.
And they kept pulling me out of the airport because they said they were checking all our equipment. And I was the radio man, and I had to prove that I had all the equipment.
Right.
And I got on a bus, and the bus got me all the way to another town that was like about 70 miles away.
Uh-huh. They couldn't find you.
They couldn't find me. The bus station was only a mile from the airport. Grabbed my duffel bag and my 2 bags I had and I walked down the road in uniform, in the rain. And I went to the airport and got on they put me in the car and took me to where the airport what the hell do they call it? Operational.
Yeah, the operations center, whatever. Yeah.
And I went there and I got in. I got checked in, and my getting on an airplane was free.
Oh.
I did because I had this ticket that said United States Army, and that's who paid for the flight. I flew to San Antonio, and I met my mother and dad at the airport. My dad came and got me. We came back to their motel, and I was in the same room with them. And I went down to the office and told them that I was with my dad and my mother, and I was going to pay them. And they said, no. He said, you're okay. Your dad's already paid for you.
Oh.
And I said, I came back and I said, hey, Dad, what'd you pay for me for? I said, I got the money to pay for here. He said, shut up.
Right.
I said, yes, Sergeant.
So how did you meet this girl then? So while you were on leave, you met her?
I met her.
Okay.
That was my first. She ended up being my first wife.
Right. So you met her while you were in San Antonio.
Yep.
Visiting your family.
Yep.
And then you, of course, have to go back.
I went to Vietnam.
Yep. And you were writing back and forth, letters back and forth.
Yeah.
And then you ended up getting hit, and you come back to San Diego or San Antonio, and she ends up being your nurse.
Yeah, she was a surgical nurse.
Okay.
That's what her designation was.
Okay. And when did you? I'll let you finish that.
I'm not sure. I can't remember exactly. It was the second tour.
Uh-huh.
I was from 66 to 67 was my first tour.
Mm-hmm.
68 to 69 was my second tour. It was March of 69 is when I got hit.
Okay. And so that's when all of this happens.
Yeah.
And then you come back, you go through all of that. Did you start dating then after you got out of the hospital, or I mean, how did that work with you and your?
She came into the hospital room. My mother was out, and my mother didn't like her.
Okay.
Because she was all dressed in nurse's uniform, and she said, "Mrs. Tharr," and she says, "Yes." She said, "I'm Audrey Allen. I'm Richard's fiancée."
Oh.
I had asked her to marry me when I was in the hospital.
Did you remember asking her to marry you?
Yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Yeah. And my mother said, "We haven't talked to you before." She tells my dad, she calls my dad, he said, "I just met Audrey Allen. She is Richard's fiancée." And my dad comes in there and he says, and she's sitting there, and he was very, he wasn't upset with anything. He said, "When did you do this?" I said, "When I was in the hospital." I said, she was the surgical nurse. And Audrey said, that's true.
And the rest is history, right? So
Yeah.
So you
We got married. We got married in 60. It was the summer of 68.
okay.
The summer of 68. We were married 17 years.
So how long? When did you get out of the military then? When were you?
I was in the military, in and out of the military while I was working at Chrysler.
Okay. So you when you got married, when did you start working for Chrysler then?
I was working at Chrysler from 1962.
Okay.
I graduated from high school in 1962 in June,
Right.
and in October I started working for Chrysler.
Okay.
And I worked for Chrysler 44 years. And I was in that 12 years that I was in the military. I was 21 years in the military,
Okay.
and the 12 of it was working as airborne ranger and radio man, and I come back to Chrysler, and I had my head was all wrapped up, and they said we can't let you go on the manufacturing floor.
So you were in the Army Reserves, is that?
Huh?
Were you in the Army Reserve?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That makes more sense to me now. So you're in the Army Reserve. So you were doing your military duty and then coming back to work, and then so you worked.
They would call me, and they'd call Chrysler and say, we want all our people.
Yep. Okay.
And I'd take off, and I'd come. Sometimes I would come back to work in uniform, in
Yeah.
my BDUs.
I've done that before. I know what you're talking about. I've been there. So so this all happens. You get married. You go back to, but Chrysler can't put you on the floor. So what did you do?
I went with the Army.
Okay.
I just went back to the Army, and when I got the everything off my head and everything, and I was good. I was clean. I passed all the tests they gave me, and there was a bunch.
All but.
And I was still a ranger, but I wasn't an active ranger.
Right.
I went to the military band,
Okay.
and I played drums in the Army band
Okay.
while I was waiting to get cleared to go back to the Rangers.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the band, the Ranger band was terrible.
Because they were Rangers, they weren't really musicians, right?
They weren't. They didn't practice. They didn't.
Yeah.
And these guys were trying to blow horns and play saxophones and play tubas and they couldn't hold a note.
Yeah.
I had to show the trumpet players. I said, you're not giving yourself the proper
A proper seal, right? On the,
and blowing the trumpet. I said, you're not even playing the scales.
Yeah.
This one guy said, I haven't played the scales in years. And I said, well, you better start now, because everything is working from the scales. I said, the music is set from the scales.
Right.
And he says, oh, come on, Sarge. I said, yeah, do it. And I had these guys, I had all the trumpets playing with the way they were supposed to play, and the saxophone players were in the same damn mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And I told them, I said, hey, you got to get with it, man. You got to play. He said, we've been playing in another band. He said, it's a blues band. And I said, it is. And I said, wow. I said, give me some of it. And this one black guy, he could blow. Oh man, could he blow! And I got on a drum set, and I'm right with him.
Yeah.
Felt good. Band director comes in and says, I like that.
Wow. Very cool. So when did you actually go back to Chrysler full time then?
I did when I did 21 years. I got retired. The Army retired me.
Right.
I was at Fort Benning, Georgia, and the command sergeant major and this colonel came in, and this captain came in, and he said, Sergeant Little, he said, you're retired as of right now. I had 15 guys in the office. We were doing crypto.
Uh-huh.
And I stopped and I said, do you have your do you have top secret clearance? And there was only one man. The captain had top secret clearance. I said, the other people have to wait outside. And I came out on a porch with them, and they said, I'm a colonel. I said, don't care.
Right.
It has to be. And I said, this is crypto. It's top secret. He said, well, I said, yes, sir. This major was standing there. She was a woman. And she said, you're telling me that I have to have top secret clearance? And I said, yes, ma'am.
It is what it is. You got to have the right clearance to do the work, to see what's going on.
And she said, and we're going to retire you. And I said, well, that's what's happening. I'm going back to Chrysler. And I did. I went back to Chrysler. I walked in Chrysler civilian clothes. I still have my combat boots.
Right. Right. So this would have been what, like 1973 then?
Yeah.
Okay, 1973.
About then.
Yeah. So you go back to Chrysler. You're married. Did you have any children at this time?
Yeah, we had Kathy.
Uh-huh.
And Libby. Audrey had Kathy and Libby, and then 11 years later, she had Bobby.
Mm-hmm.
And he is the one that you'll see here. He's in his 40s now.
Okay.
And I had to teach him how to fight, because the kids at my Audrey didn't want him to fight and told him, don't you fight with anybody. And he was getting his butt kicked.
Yeah.
And I took him down the basement and I showed him certain moves, certain stances, and which way to block and which way to how to stop somebody from hitting him. And he had a broken nose, and he was still getting hit in the nose.
Yeah.
And I said, hit him hard. And we had a bag, and I wrapped his hands. I had my hands wrapped. Mm-hmm. And we're punching. I'm teaching him how to punch. And I taught him, I said, when the guy is coming at you, and I swung at him and I said, he came up and he blocked my arm. I said, yes, that's what you got to do with them. You have to look at them. You don't close your eyes. That's what he was doing.
Right.
And he was getting clobbered. I said, you have to have your eyes open. You have to look at your opponent. And I said, and knock the hell out of him. I said, if you have to, hit him in the temple.
Yeah.
That'll knock them down. I said, hit them upside the head. Hit them in their face. Hit them in their nose. Break their nose. I said, hit them in their jaw. Hit them in the jaw. It changes the attitude of the chin.
Right.
So you have to knock it over. And I said, 9 times out of 10, that'll knock them out. And I said, you have to hit them hard. It's not just, you have to hit them as hard as you could possibly swing. You block with both arms. And he said, Bobby, and my wife comes downstairs, she says, what are you teaching him? I said, I'm teaching him to defend himself. He's getting his butt kicked at school. And she said, no, he isn't. He turns around and she looked at him, and it's the first time she saw both his eyes being black.
Yeah.
And his cheeks were swelled. And I said, you like this? And she said, no, I don't. I'll go and talk to the principal. I said, that ain't gonna get it. I'm going to teach him how to defend himself and how to make them bleed. 4 guys. These 4 guys. And he beat them all.
Took your lessons to heart. So what are your, I want to talk a little bit about your family. What do your daughters do? Where are they at today?
Libby is working in a dentist's office. She makes the false teeth.
Okay.
She makes the false teeth.
Yeah, the dentures. She works on
the dentures.
Yeah, okay.
The upper and lowers.
Yeah. What does your other daughter do?
And my other daughter is a executive secretary for. She was. She was executive secretary for where my aunt worked.
Okay. Yeah, we don't have to talk about what business, but she was an executive secretary.
It's off of it's in Detroit, and it's where all the tall buildings are.
Oh, okay. Like the Renaissance Center area?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. The tall buildings there, the white building,
Mm-hmm.
she was on the top floor.
Okay.
And she did not like, I had my son, both my sons, Kenny was here, Bobby's here.
Mm-hmm.
and we came up, we were not in suits.
Oh.
And my daughter is sitting there and she says, get out of this office. You're not dressed properly. And I said, we're dressed. She said, you're not dressed properly, Dad. I'll see you at home. I said, okay.
Dismissed. And then what about your son then? What is he doing today?
Bobby is going through training to be a pilot.
Okay.
And my other son, Kenny, is in prison right now.
So how long is he in for then?
He's in. Well, it's if he gets out within the next 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
If he doesn't get out, it's going to be 15 years.
Okay. Well, let's go back then and talk a little bit about. So you were married for 17 years to your first wife.
Yep.
And
she passed away with bone marrow cancer.
Okay.
She was in charge of the neonatal care at St. John Hospital.
Mm-hmm.
They're on Moros. and she was she would take care of the little tiny babies, the preemies.
Yeah.
She'd take them down to X-ray, and she'd hold their hands and their feet and hands, and have the babies hold on to her fingers, and hold her feet. She would cover her chest, but she wouldn't cover her hands.
Oh.
And she got irradiated on her arms and her hands. And we were married 17 years. She came down with cancer in her arms. Every Thanksgiving, we would drive to New Jersey to her parents' house, and they would come to here at Christmas time.
Yeah.
And Easter time. And they'd be with us that time. And it was always a good time.
Yeah.
Ellen's were he was a very strong-minded person, and he didn't appreciate the fact that I was a ranger, because the people that he worked with had sons that were rangers, and they're all in prison.
Yeah.
Because they got into fights with people, and they used what they had learned being a ranger. I don't get in fights.
Right.
I don't. I have.
Yeah, it's better to avoid them if you can. Sure.
I was only in one fight, and it was here,
Oh.
the A building, and all I did was just block the punches. I didn't go into anything.
Yeah. So let me ask you this: what did you work the line at Chrysler then? Your 44 years that you were there.
I started off as a press operator. And I went. I was 2 years. My first 2 years, I got called out because I was in the reserves.
Right.
And we went back to Vietnam. So I came back from Vietnam, and I was on afternoons, and I got home early in the morning, and I was still in BDUs. So I went to Chrysler in the BDUs, jump boots, and they didn't. The boss didn't like that. He said, I was in the Army, and he said, I never came in here with the uniform on. And I said, I'm not hurting you. I said, I'm not hurting anybody. I'm not going to be hurting anybody. And the general foreman came up beside me, and I just automatically went to an attention, and he said, I want you to be a foreman. And I said, yes, sir.
Yeah.
And he says, tomorrow you come in, he says, with black pants, white shirt, black tie. I said, yes, sir. And I look over at my foreman, who was, his last name was Green, it was Jim Green. He looked at me and he says, well, hell, why didn't I come in here with a uniform when I first got out of the Army?
Maybe it wasn't such a bad idea after all.
And this General Foreman was a real turkey, man. He was something else. He was, he came from Mack Avenue, and he came in as a General Foreman. And so he ended up in the assembly area of Chrysler, Sterling Stamping, and he says, "You're going to have line 4, you're going to have line 5, you're going to have line 6, 7, and 8." And I said, "Well, 2 of those are hoods. Line 5 is a hood, and line 8 is a hood." And I said, "The other ones are all they were all they were dashboards for 3 different cars." And he says, "Well, you know them. You've been an inspector." He said, "I expect you to know what the hell you're doing." And I said, "Yes, sir. I know what the hell to do." And I had all my people. I had all of them. And I told him, I says, "I'm your new foreman." I said, "I've been here as an inspector," and I said, "I was told Friday I was told to come in here Monday in uniform for a foreman." And I said, "I am your new foreman." I told him my name, and I told him, I said, I'm an Army Ranger, and we're going to be running these same hoods. Only thing I want is I want you here 15 minutes before the bell. Once that bell rings, I want to see running. And I had these girls that were the inspectors, and I said, "And you ladies will be doing the weld breakup for the inner, and you will be checking the hem on on the hoods." I said, "And you will be looking at both the front, the side, and turn it around, looking at the back, looking at the cowl." And they said, "Why?" I said, "Because I want you to see if there's a buckle. If you're looking from the front to the back and you can't, and you think it's okay, then you turn around, you find out there's a buckle there."
Yeah.
And that's exactly what would happen with a panel. Because the panel would be coming down the line, and there would be a pin missing. So the panel would go in, and it would be back here or up here, because it would swing, because the pin was on one side, not both sides. And it would be the flange press. It would settle in. It would settle into the proper position, but it would be either a little bit forward or a little bit back. And I said, look at the hood and look to see if you still have the hole
Right.
from the punch. And it took the girls about 3 days to get used to that.
So you kind of brought everybody in, showed them what you wanted done, and then
I told them, I
ran
said,
with
"I
it,
want you here 15 minutes before the bell. When the bell rings, we're running the lines.
Yeah.
Sleeves, gloves, pads, helmet, glasses. That's what you wear. That's safety." I said, "You don't put your hands in the presses. Never put your hands in the presses. The only person that goes in the presses is the die makers. And they said, okay. And I had the die makers there too.
Right. So everybody's on the same page.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had them, and the next day we had, it was crazy. It was a Saturday. We were working a Saturday. And that day was Saturday, and we had just had a die set, a new die. Mm-hmm. New dies were put in on the line. And I walk up to the press, and I'm looking at the press, and I'm looking at it, and I'm seeing there's 2 bolts in the front, 1 bolt on the side, 1 bolt on the other side, no bolts on the back of the die for the upper section. Mm-hmm. And I said, don't run the line. Stand away from the line. I told the die maker, I said, you better call the people that put these dies in. There's not enough bolts on it. There's no bolts on the bottom. No bolts on any of it on the bottom. We're supposed to have 6 bolts on the sides and 4 bolts on the front and rear. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't run the line. I had three presses with dies that weren't properly fitted. And the general foreman comes up and he says, "Why isn't this line running?" I said, "Because there's no bolts in the presses, in the dies." And he looked at me and he said, "What do you mean there's no bolts in there?" He says, "I can see the bolt." He looked and he says, "There's supposed to be 4 bolts." I said, "Yeah, there's only 1, isn't there? The other die, it's only 2. And I said, "And on the bottom, there's no bolts on the bottom press." And he said, "Okay, I don't want these people standing. Put them over on the other line that's being put in now. Mm-hmm. Just have them stand over there, and then when it's ready to run, put them on there." And I said, "Okay." So I had the people that put the dies in. They came back to the line, and I said, "Put the bolts in the die where it's supposed to be." And they bring them down, put them on, and everything is settled. Everything's right. And I said, "And on the bottom too." Mm-hmm. And he says, the one guy, he's supposedly their boss, and he's a die setter also. And he's the one that is one of the ones that actually, make sure that the thing is right. Yeah. General Foreman is sitting on his golf cart, and he sees me, and he says, "I don't have to do all this." And I said, "You have to make sure that what is necessary to be safe. That's your job." And he starts raising Cain, he's raising his voice, and this general foreman comes up right between us. And he looks at him and he said, "I hear one more word out of you." He said, "I'm going to lay you off." And he says, "And you won't be back for at least 6 weeks. You ready for that?" He says, "No, sir." He says, "Put the bolts where they're supposed to be." And he turns around, he looks at me, and I could tell what he's thinking. And he gets back, and all the guys jump on the press. The press is down, it's in the place and everything, and they got the top of the press down so they can put the bolts in it. Right. And he puts the bolts in it, gets it all squared away. Every damn press, from the draw all the way down, all of them needed to have bolts in.
Yeah, so he went and checked them all. Yeah. That's not good. It's not good for that foreman for sure.
I had he was one of these guys that he thought that everything he said was absolutely right, and he wasn't.
Yeah, sometimes you're wrong, right? I mean, so how long were you a foreman there at Chrysler?
9 years.
Okay, and then what did you do after that?
I was in the Army. I was still in the Army.
Right.
And I was in when I came back from the Army. I was gone for 3 months, and they said, "Where'd you go this time?" I said, "I can't say." He said, "What do you mean you can't say?" I said, "You're not top secret. I can't tell you." And he says, and they were mad at me because these other foremen, and they said, "What do you mean we're not top secret?"
Yeah.
And two of the other guys were in the Army also, and they were one was a tanker. He drove tanks, and the other guy was a mechanic. And he says, "Well," he says, "with Army," he says, "you don't." He can't tell you,
Right.
and I couldn't.
Right. You were doing what you're supposed to do. So you came back. Then once you were completely retired from the Army, you were a foreman at one point. You kind of go through your career.
I came back in, and when I was laid off, I came back in as an inspector.
Okay.
And I worked 3 years as an inspector, and I had to literally teach inspectors how to be inspectors, and I wasn't a foreman,
Right.
but they looked at me as a foreman.
Okay. So you worked the line, then you were an inspector, then you were a foreman?
No, I was a press operator.
Right.
And I went from being a press operator to a team leader.
Okay.
I had 4 lines, and they were all hoods. And I had the B body hood was on line 5. The C body hood was on line 7, and then it went way down to 15, and the last one was on 31. And that was the Chrysler hood.
Okay.
That was like it was as long as that couch.
Yeah. Yeah, they were big cars back in the day. That's for sure. That's for sure. So during this time though, you're working at Chrysler, and then your first wife passes away.
Yeah, she had cancer.
Right, and I noticed
6 years after that. Now I had a band. I had the Midnight Special Band. It was at first it was called a Blue Ridge Band, and we were playing the Midnight Special, and I said, and me and the piano player John Addis, I said, we need to change the name of the band. I said, to this song, and he said, I agree, because we do more rock and roll than we do country.
right.
And I said, yeah, and we also play jazz. We also play big band, because I brought in the books.
Yeah.
And he didn't like reading the music, but when he found out that it was all set up, that he was reading Count Basie, and he was reading other big name. He knew the names of the people We didn't know what band they were with, and then he found out what band they were with, and he started reading the music, and all of us were reading the music.
Mm-hmm.
And the the bass man, he was just enjoying the hell out of it. And we were doing the big band music, because when we went to the VFWs, they were older men, older women. That's what they wanted to dance with.
They wanted to hear music that they knew.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
And that's what we did.
Okay. So,
So
how long were you in that band for?
I had that band for 50 years.
Wow. Okay.
And the piano player, John Addis, he passed out on stage. We were playing at Penna's over here on Van Dyke, the restaurant, the big hall.
Yeah.
We had I got the EMS to come in and take him, and took him, and 3 weeks later he passed away.
Wow. So what year was this that happened?
That was 86, I think.
Okay.
I think it was 86. I'm not sure.
Right.
And I tried to get, I went through about 7 piano players to play with us. And they could play some of it, but they couldn't play all of it. Mm-hmm. They couldn't read music. They were playing piano by ear.
Right.
And I didn't like it. I told him, I said, why can't you read music? You're a piano player. He said, I've always been able to do the music, I listen to it on the radio and I can play it. And
Yeah. So in between all of this, though, you got remarried. Mm-hmm. Is that true? Okay.
Yeah, I got married to Dominica.
Okay.
She was Italian, and she was an American Italian. She was born in Sicily.
Mm-hmm. Now, were all 4 of your children with your first wife, or did you have a child with your second wife too?
We had 2 children. Mamie and I had 2 children.
Okay.
And that was Judy and Kenny.
Okay. And then with your second wife, you had
Judy and Kenny.
Oh, okay. Okay, I understand now. Okay.
And it ended up being 4 daughters.
Mm-hmm.
And I had 3, with 7 kids all told.
Okay.
7.
Yeah, all together with both wives. And how long were you married the second time? Were you still married?
37 years.
Wow. Okay.
She had a Mamie. That was her
kind of her nickname, what you called
nickname,
her?
Yeah. She had a brain tumor.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what took her.
Okay.
The last 8 years that we were married, I had to take care of her. I was retired by then.
Right.
And I couldn't leave her alone.
No.
And I had to pick her up and take her into the bathroom, pull everything down and set her down in the toilet so she could go to the bathroom, and I'd have to wash her butt and everything else.
Right.
And she did not like it. She didn't like me doing that and my daughters would come in and they'd say, Papa, what are you doing? And I'd say, I'm taking care of my wife. What?
Yeah.
And she said, and Mamie couldn't talk because the brain tumor. She could talk to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But she couldn't form a sentence. And most of the time it came out cuss words.
Oh boy.
And she never cussed before then.
Right. Well, that'll do things to your brain, though.
Yeah, and it was, and I took her to the hospital the last time, and I picked her up out of the car, and I took her in. I carried her in, and the nurses there, I put her on the gurney, and they covered her up. And I said, she has a brain tumor, and I said, she's not herself right now. And she never came out of it.
Yeah.
It was 2 weeks she was in the hospital, and she never came out of it. She'd wake up like she was gonna get out of bed, and she had those alarms on the bed, you know.
Yeah.
And just so happened that when that happened, I was there, and I'd walk in and I'd catch her trying to get out of bed. And she said, I just want to go to the bathroom. And I'd just carry her into the bathroom, lift her gown up and set her down, and she would go. And I'd make sure she was clean. And these nurses, they said, no husband has done this. And I said, well, I'm her husband.
Yeah. You were a good husband. You were with her right through all of it.
All of it.
Yeah. When did she pass away? What year was that?
This is 2025.
Yeah.
She passed away in 2005.
So 20 years ago. Okay.
Yeah.
And then how long have you been here at the Veterans Home here in Michigan?
About 3 weeks.
Oh, so you just moved in.
Yeah.
Okay. So in that 20 years, I'm assuming that's when were you still playing in bands and
Yeah.
and doing your thing?
Yeah.
All right, that's very cool.
I didn't have John, but I had other piano players that were not anywhere near what John was playing.
And isn't that difficult when you find the one and then you have to find somebody else? No one can ever compare.
There's no comparison.
Right.
And we had my daughter was playing bass. Her husband was playing in a band with us. He was playing keyboard organ.
Yeah.
And he was also playing his guitar, and he was singing. He had a good voice. And Denny Parrott was his name. And he had 5 kids and his wife, and he left all of them to marry Joni. And I said, Denny, I said, don't you think you should stay with your children and with your wife? And he says, I can't stand my wife. My wife is always at me. And I think that was a bullshit.
Yeah.
And he left his wife, he left his kids. His one son was coming to see him and got into a car accident and broke his neck. And so he was with his whole family. And he introduced Joni as his new wife. And they didn't like her.
Yeah.
Because he had his wife, and his wife was a much prettier woman. I mean, I told Mamie, I said, hey, I don't know why he's so turned on Joni, because his wife, that was his wife, is a beautiful woman. I don't know why he's so tight on Joni. And my wife, she kind of said, well, it's the way it is.
Yeah, people make decisions, and we don't always understand why they make those decisions, and that's what
And he
happens.
had 5 kids.
Yeah, yeah, I can't imagine that. That's
And then what happened with Denny, and I think it was the Lord that did it, but his kidneys failed.
mm-hmm.
They failed in a way that they couldn't fix.
So Denny ended up passing away from kidney failure. Or...
Yeah.
So what happens with the band after that?
Well, I didn't have John and Joni. Her son Billy was married. My son Kenny was in the wedding. He was his best man because they were good friends.
Yeah.
And they were his son committed suicide because his wife left a letter, and he went to his garage and hung himself.
Oh my gosh.
So she had Denny dying on 3 months before,
Mm-hmm.
and then here is Billy committing suicide, and she found him in the garage.
Yeah.
And she called the EMS to come and help him, and they said that when they got him off of the rafter, he was they had him in the gurney, and they had him covered up.
Right.
And she said, "Well, can't you help him? Can't you get it?" And they said, "He is gone."
Mm-hmm.
He had the rope. You could see the rope impression, the bruising on his neck,
Yeah.
and it was just
It's terrible.
the whole thing. She couldn't play anymore. She
Yeah.
couldn't sing. She'd start singing the song and she'd start crying on stage. And I had to get another bass person.
Mm-hmm.
And I went through 5 bass people. We finally got another woman that could play bass as well as Joni,
Mm-hmm.
but she couldn't sing worth a hoot.
So now you need a singer.
She could play bass like crazy, but she never sang.
Right.
And the piano player, I said, "Come here, I want you to sing this song." And I said, "It's," I said, "See if you could sing it." And it was a popular song that had been out since the 50s,
Uh-huh.
and she
Just couldn't do it, huh?
couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And I said, "Why are you not? You could play the bass like hell, but why can't you sing like hell?" And she said, "I've never sang."
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, I can play the guitar, but I can't sing. I can't hold a tune in a bucket, but I can play the guitar. So I get it. like that's got to be frustrating for her, but no one wants to hear me sing either. So I totally get that. But so you ended up getting the band back together? I mean, did you finally get it all put back together?
I got it back to a certain point.
Yeah.
There was a lot of songs that we could not play because the piano player couldn't read music.
Right.
And this other person that was playing bass, she couldn't read music, but she could sing.
Okay.
This bass player, she could sing, and she had 20 songs that she could sing. Didn't learn more, wasn't going to learn more.
So you're kind of stuck with those 20 songs.
Yeah.
Did you finally leave this band?
Well, what happened was the piano player and the lady, both of them, were in the same car. They left on a Friday night after we got through playing.
Mm-hmm.
and they pulled out on the Grossbeck, and this guy that was drunk, that was driving a truck, hit them and killed them both.
Wow. Okay.
And that basically ended the band.
Well, yeah.
I couldn't get another piano player, and I couldn't get another bass player.
So what did you do? What did you do after that?
Got my drums out of the bar. We got the piano out of the bar. And I had the piano for a long time.
Yeah.
In the house. And because it belonged to this girl that was killed.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of these keyboards, you know?
Yeah.
And it was a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. And her husband finally showed up at the house, and he said, "Yeah, I want to get the piano." He said it was in the house all the time, and I just can't seem to. Not what I was wondering where it was, and then I remember you said that you had it. And I said, "Yeah, I kept it because I didn't want it to be destroyed or stolen."
Right.
And so I didn't have it plugged in. Everything was where it was supposed to be. I helped him carry out to his van, and we put it in the back of his van, and he had, he said, "Hey," he says, "I have not been able to figure out what to do with about my wife." I said, "What do you mean? We went to the funeral.
Yeah.
I went to the funeral." I said, "Didn't you bury her?" And he says, "She is cremated. They took her from the funeral home and cremated her."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I have her ashes at home. They're in a jar. They're in a nice jar." He says, "I'm not going to put her in the ground because I can talk to her."
Yeah.
I said, "Yeah, okay. That's okay." Now, I didn't say anything against him.
Yeah.
He was a guy that was in love with her, and that was it. And I said, here's the. Gave him the piano because that was their piano in the first place. It was a keyboard.
Mm-hmm.
It was in a case. It was about as long as that.
This table here, though.
The table.
Yeah, the coffee table.
And she was good.
Mm-hmm.
She was excellent. She played in church, and she didn't like playing in church because they always played the same. She said they always played the same songs.
Yeah.
It was they wanted to play this song and then that song and then this song, depending on what he was preaching.
Mm-hmm.
Is how the choir director went, and it was always the same songs.
Right.
I went to that church, and they still do it the same way.
Some things will never change. They'll never change. So you this band is done. I mean, it sounds like a lot of bad luck for some people there, really.
Yeah.
If you think about it, and so did you go to another band? Did you form another band? Did you just stop doing?
I tried to form another band, but I couldn't find people that could play and sing. That's the thing. I had people that could play bass and play guitar. The name of the band was the Midnight Special.
The Midnight Special.
I had it for 50 years. We played in 6 states.
That's a long time, and that's a lot of places to play. I bet you had a great time.
Oh, we had a great time. We always had I had full confidence in my band.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody sang. I had this young lady that was playing saxophone, tenor sax, alto sax, baritone sax, and flute. She was a flautist. And she could sing. I mean, we were singing harmony. She and I sang harmony together.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, it was, I hated the fact that she was leaving my band. And I told her that. I said, I said, I can't pay you more than anybody else because everybody gets paid the same. I didn't get any extra money because I was the leader of the band. I didn't do that. Everybody got the same.
Yeah.
And I said, and she said, well, I want to go to Memphis and see if I can get a job as a studio musician in a recording studio. She had talked to people down there on the phone, and they had already hired her. I didn't know that.
Oh.
And she said, well, she's going down there. She and her husband they're taking her kids and going to Memphis. That's where she went. And that's what she's doing now.
That's amazing.
I get a Christmas card from her and a card at Easter time and that. And I went down there myself and I stopped at their house. They had a beautiful home. Her husband is an engineer. He's working in a factory down there as a plant manager, and he's making big money. And she is working in this studio,
Living out her dream, it sounds like.
And I went in the studio with her. And I met the people that she was playing with. I played drums on a song that they were practicing, and they said, "Why aren't you down here?" And I said, "Hey," I said, "I live up in Michigan." I said, "That's where all my family is."
Yeah.
I said, "I'd love to be down here. I love the South." I said, "I'm from Tennessee. Part of Tennessee is where I'm from. That's where I was born."
That's what your birth certificate says anyway.
Yeah, that's what the first...
One or two of them birth certificates anyway.
I got both of them.
Well, Rich, with that, I mean, you've lived a full life. You've done a lot of things. You've had family, you've had friends, you've played music. You've been inspirational for people. You've taught people what they, how to do things maybe the right way sometimes. And like all of us, you probably made your own mistakes.
Oh yeah.
But as we kind of wrap up our conversation today, I always ask people the same question. And the question is, when someone listens to this story years from now, what lesson do you want for them to take away from how you've lived your life and from our conversation today?
That I'm honest. I didn't embellish anything. I told you the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that's where I come from. As an airborne ranger, there's no way in hell I'm going to lie.
Do you think that being honest and truthful is maybe how people should be living their lives then?
I hope.
Yeah.
If they don't, they're going to have a big time trouble when they go see the Lord.
No, that's true. All right. Well, thank you for sitting here with me all afternoon. It's been great to get to know you. I really appreciate the fact that you would sit here and talk to me about your life.
Well, I've never done that before. I can't say anything about Vietnam because you don't have a top secret clearance.
That's right. I'm gonna have to go get one because I want to hear those stories. All right. That's a wrap for this episode of the Veterans Archives podcast. We truly appreciate you taking the time to listen and honor the incredible stories of our nation's heroes. Don't forget, you can catch us every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern on Wreaths Across America Radio, or stream past episodes anytime on Buzzsprout, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and as I've said before, any place you can find a podcast, you can find the Veterans Archives podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share our content on YouTube and Facebook and TikTok and Instagram and across all social media. Every share helps us reach more people and preserve more stories. The Veterans Archives podcast is a nonprofit initiative, and our mission is simple: to give veterans a voice and ensure their stories are never forgotten. This service is completely free for veterans because their sacrifices deserve to be recognized and remembered. You want to help? Follow us, spread the word, and if you know a veteran with a story to tell, send them our way. Visit us at veteransarchives.org to learn more about how you can get involved. Thanks again for tuning in, and most importantly, thank you to all the veterans and their families for their service and sacrifice. Until next time, take care, and we will see you on the next episode of the Veterans Archives Podcast.